everybody, welcome back to Taji's World of Books and welcome to another book recommendation video. Hey you guys, welcome back. So I am in the process of filming a couple of videos for you guys. I'm a little bit late and a little bit early on some things, but I'm excited about the new content that's coming out. But this video today is going to be on wild men. So these are men that are alphas through and through, but when the heroine first meets them, they are just straight out wild, just from another planet wild. Like whether they be cavemen, whether they be isolated for years upon years, whether they be, you know, antisocial, they are just wild and need to be tamed. But once they are tamed, it is worth it and then some. These are some sexy books. They are some fun books. I tried to come up with some really creative ways to bring it to you. There's going to be a mix of different things. It just so happens that these guys, because they are wild men, some of them are also virginal heroes as well, so that's kind of spicy and sexy. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so the first book that I want to recommend to you is A Hunger Like No Other. I am in the process of currently rereading the Immortals After Dark series because I wanted to make sure that I was going to have the best reading experience possible when I go into Monroe, book 19. And so I said, you know what? It has been so long since I've read them. I'm going to reread these books. And I am so glad that I did. I'm having the best time doing this. And let me say, they are as good as I remember them. Because I look at what the rating was, what I rated them before. And these are all 5 out of 5 stars. They're amazing, amazing books. This is the first book in the series. Actually, the first book is like a novella. And it's called The Warlord Wants Forever. It's a 0.5. But this is the first official book in the series. And what makes this guy, so this is about Lachlan, I'm looking at my notes. It's about Lachlan and Emmeline, or Emma. And what makes Lachlan a wild man is he has been trapped under the ground by one of the other vampire sort of nemesis or enemies. And he's been trapped under the ground for like 5,000 years. And his punishment has been that he is burned repeatedly over and over again. And he's literally hanging on the end of sanity and is ready to break when he scents his mate from above. And when he scents her from above, he is going to do whatever it takes to get free to get to her, because he's in the catacombs in Paris. And what that means for him is that he has to gnaw off his leg. He breaks it, he does whatever he takes, and he ultimately gnaws off his leg to get topside so he can get to her. And does he get to her? He absolutely does. And so he follows her scent, and he is really slow regenerating. He's a regenerative vampire. Or no, he's not a vampire. He's a lycanthrope. He's a lycae. And so when you get into the Immortals After Dark, the ongoing storyline is that the accession is nearing, and the accession is time basically when immortals fight one another in a culling. A culling is like a thinning. It's thinning out the herd because they, for whatever reason, it's the way that nature has intended for immortals or for, you know, people that are, you know, lycae, vampires, witches, any of those supernatural beings, demons can be, you know, lessened. And also during the accession, you also have very interesting pairings. So you might have a demon and a vampire. You might have a lycae and a witch. These are things that don't normally happen, but during the accession, these people tend to get together. And this is the case with Lachlan. Lachlan is the king of the lycae, and Emmeline is a Valkyrie, but she also is part vampire. So she is part vampire and part Valkyrie. And he finds that she is his mate. And he is going to track her and find her. And when they do get together, it's also an age gap. It's also a forbidden romance. It's an age gap in that he is like a 5,000-year-old lycae, and she is like a 22-year-old vampire. Basically, she's only like 70, but she literally is like very, very young. And so he comes from a completely different time. So he's like, what are you wearing? Why are you so revealing? Why are your undergarments like this? They go through all of these stages of things that like they have to come to learn how to communicate. And he thinks that she is a loose, immoral woman, and she actually has never been kissed and never been touched. And he treats her very, very poorly because he hates her because she is a vampire. He doesn't understand that she's part Valkyrie and vampire. He just sees that she's a vampire. And so He and the vampires have been the ones that have tortured him for 5,000 years, so he absolutely hates her and cannot believe that he's been saddled with a mate such as this. And so really it's their story of them coming to love one another, respect one another, honor and treat each other with respect, and it is a fabulous story. It is so good. I love the coming of age of this story and how they come together to mutually respect one another and how they find that trust and rely upon one another and learn that what you've been given by the gods, by fate, is what you need, not what you think you need is what you need. So it's a really amazing story. If you've not read Immortals After Dark, you guys, don't sleep on this. Like, I'm telling you, this is so worth it. It's definitely a 5 out of 5. The sexy time is amazing. I told you guys I'm doing a new rating scale. So the angst in this book is a 4. The overall spicy steaminess is a 4, and the overall rating is a 5. So good, so worth it. The next book that I want to talk about is Our Dark Needs at Night's Edge. This is book 4 in the Immortals After Dark series. And this is about a human woman who was a dancer who died in 1927 in her home called Ellencourt because her fiance, or a guy that was really interested in her, murdered her. And then it's also about Conrad, and Conrad is the 4th brother, okay? So the earlier books we've already heard about, there's Sebastian, Nikolai, Murdoch, what we hear about later, and then there's Conrad. So there's 4 Roth brothers, and these are ancient Estonian warriors that they were human and now are vampire, and there's a story behind why they become vampire, and that is why Conrad is so angry and so bitter against Nikolai, and we learn about that story. And so when they find, and Conrad has been lost to his brothers for like 3 centuries. So now they have found, during this accession, everybody's sort of coming together, finding their mates, finding lost loved ones. They find Conrad, and Conrad has turned full vampire. And what that means is his eyes are red, and he has killed a number of people, taken from the flesh, killed them and drank their souls, and have become basically evil and deranged. And to take with them, when you drink like that, you take with them their memories. And so he has all of these memories of all of these past beings that he has killed, and it's all this knowledge that he should not have. And so his brothers, Nikolai, Sebastian, and Murdoch, are going to save Conrad, and they bring him to Ellencourt, and they're like, we're going to give him a month, and either we can get him to stop drinking blood and drink from a blood bank out of a bag and really get him to calm down from this madness, or we're going to have to put him down. And so when they bring him to Ellencourt, he is the only one that can see Naomi. And Naomi is this tiny little 4-foot, 5-foot dancer is going to tame this 6.5-foot beast. And Conrad is a beast. He's wild and snarling and just completely out of his mind, and they're just like, I don't know if there's any hope for him. He is wild to the next level, and this little dancer brings Conrad to his knees, and it is amazing and wonderful. And you can't read this book out of order. That's the one thing about the Immortals After Dark series, is that it really is, each book is a standalone. It's standalone in that the couple gets their HEA, but there's an ongoing storyline that's developing, that's building up to a crescendo, and there are multiple cameos of previous couples that happen in these books. And so if you don't read them in order, you're going to miss the overall plot that's developing, right, that you want to know about, and you're going to be spoiled for other books in terms of those couples. So read it in order. I am going to go ahead and say that overall this book is a 5. The emotional angst of this is a 4, and the spice is a 5. I love me some Conrad. This is one of my favorite books in the series because he is such a tortured hero, but he is so amazing. And when Naomi tames him and he becomes who he is meant to be, and especially in some later books, like in Murdoch's book, when we see Conrad, oh my gosh, he relies on her so heavily. He needs her. Like, it's essential, and it's just amazing. It's just amazing. Like, just trust me on this. Check out about Immortals After Dark. Okay, so the next book that I want to talk about is book 1. This is all through, there are 3 books in the series. This is Pepper Winters. It's the Fable of Happiness series. And let me say just briefly, this is a story of, it's been a while since I've read this, but it's about Gemma and Carson. And more or less the story is that Gemma is an extreme outdoors person. She does these extreme climbs and hikes, and whenever she gets an opportunity to traverse a cave or discover a new cave, she's going to take up that, that calling. Basically, she's going to do that. And not only does she do these extreme sort of sports, if you will, she also has a thriving YouTube career where she, videotapes all of her endeavors and all of her excursions and puts it up and gives information to her viewers about how to traverse different climbs and, what gradient they are. And so one night, she has nothing really going on in her life. She's very close to her brother. She's not real close with her mom, but her dad's not in the picture. She has no significant other. She just does her thing, right? And so one night she gets a message that there is a new climb that someone has discovered on the message board, and he's like, and I wasn't able to do it, but anybody that's out there that's willing to take this test, you're gonna know it because it's marked by these yellow ribbons and blah blah blah, and like they give all the coordinates. And she's like, I'm on it. She packs up her gear. She's like, you know what, I can make it to Kentucky in no time. I'm gonna do this. She sends her brother a coordinate. She has a personal locator device. She has a satellite stat phone. She gets all her stuff together and she's gonna go off and she's gonna do this. And nothing ever works out as you intend for it to. When she goes on this hike, this extreme hike in the middle of nowhere, she obviously gets injured and accosted, and some things happen, and she meets Carson. And when I say Carson is a wild man, Carson looks like a caveman that stepped straight out of the Byzantine era. Like, he's just like out of control. He is naked. He is like straggly, long hair. Like, he literally has been on his own and isolated for the better part of his life. And then the story sort of ensues from there and really develops. This book is so good, and Gemma and Carson's story is so heartbreaking but so beautiful and so wonderful. And it's a captor-captive situation. It's forced proximity. There's some dubious consent situations. There is a development of a sex trafficking ring, and it's typical Pepper Winters, dark romance, trigger warnings galore. Check them out. It is definitely worth a ride. Like, I'm gonna say, like, spicy a 4, angsty a 4, overall rating 5. It's worth it. Go for it. I have not talked about this series in a very, very long time. This is Jacquelyn Frank, and I'll link some of my earlier videos where I talk about where this series falls in with Jacquelyn Frank's other books, but it falls in with some of her other demon series with Jacob, Gideon, Elijah, Damon. There's like a definite order of how you read the Jacquelyn Frank books. This is an oldie but goodie. It's called Ecstasy. All I'm going to say about this book is this is about Trace and Ashla. And Trace is a being that exists in total darkness, and the people that he evolves from, they're night walkers, and they also can traverse to an alternate universe, if you will. And Ashla gets into a car accident, and she has this uncanny ability to trace herself to a different plane as well. And they meet on this alternate plane. And when I say that Trace loses his damn mind, this book is the steamiest, sexiest book. The spice is a 5, because when Trace gets a hold of her and finds her and sees how gorgeous and beautiful she is, he starts to embark on a marathon journey of a sexual encounter with her, and he cannot stop, to the point where he is like he's going to kill himself and kill her. And the story is so amazing how Jacquelyn crafts this story. I absolutely loved it. It is steamy and spicy, but he like loses his mind, and he becomes like just ravenous, and it literally takes his people to trace and find him and literally get to pull him off of her, because he cannot stop. It's like ingrained in him to just go and go and go, and it's just like, and you're like, oh my, and she can't stop either. She can't stop him from doing it, and she can't tell him to stop because she doesn't want to, but neither of them, they're like literally have lost like 40 pounds. Like, it is like next level crazy. and I absolutely love, and she's so innocent and has so much courage and so much heart, but there's so much lust and so much sensual heat, and he just is overtaken by it, because that's what happens when you exist on this plane for too long. Like, you lose your sense of like whether you're coming and going. So good. It's so good. Trust me. It's very angsty. It's like a 4. It's been a while since I read this. I gave it a 5 overall reading. But when I think about somebody that's just gone wild at the scent and sight of his woman, that's this. Believe me. Trust me. Don't sleep on it. Okay, the next book that I want to talk about is Tillie Cole. This is part of her MC series, the Hades Hangman. This is a dark romance, lots of trigger warnings, and one of the most broken heroes that I've ever encountered is Flame. And this is Flame and Maddie. And Flame is part of the Hades Hangman. They're a MC, right, that exists in this world. And they have rescued a group of sisters from a cult where they have been used as sexual slaves in this cult. And one of the girls who was taken as a very young child and used in this way is Maddie. And Flame and Maddie sort of are both two really broken characters, to the point where they think that Flame is a danger to Maddie. So they try to keep them separated, but Maddie only trusts Flame for a number of reasons. There are 2 books dedicated to Flame and Maddie in this series, so check it out. This is another ongoing plot that's developing. You need to read the books in order to really understand what's going on. This is an ongoing series. Viking is going to get his book soon. That's coming out. Flame and Maddie's story is so breathtaking and so heartbreaking that it can't all be told in one book. So there is a subsequent book about them that comes later on. Go and check that out. But here we see where Flame is absolutely wild, and he does things like self-injury. He does things like excessive masturbating. He engages in behavior that makes you feel disturbed, and you feel like you don't want to be alone around him because he's a dangerous individual. But when you get to know Flame and you hear his backstory, Flame is amazing. Amazing on so many levels. And Flame is the kind of character who is more likely to hurt himself than anyone else, and the only person who can get through to Flame and help Flame discover this and discover who he is and be able to work through all this trauma is Maddie. And in likewise, Maddie only feels safe with Flame, and it is beautiful, and in perfect Tillie Cole fashion. It starts off dark and gritty, and it gets more glorious and more shiny and more beautiful and just wonderful as it goes. The next series, or the next duet that I want to talk about, is Feral King and Tragic King. And this story it starts off as a MFM, and it turns out to be an MMF. So you know I love me a menage. I love a good menage. And I absolutely love this because it's about Minnow and Severin. And Minnow in this story is hired to work with Severin because Severin he's Asperger's and on the spectrum, and doesn't get along with people, doesn't understand people, doesn't communicate well. He's a hermit, he's isolated, but very, very wealthy, very eccentric, and just, he's disheveled, long hair, beard everywhere, dirty, like he barely eats. He's gotten food poisoning many times because he can't take care of himself. And so he's hired Minnow by his housekeeper and people that are in his employ. There's about 5 people, like including his half-brother, that he is actually help him to navigate life. And Minnow has become one of these people that he has hired. Nobody has lasted prior to Minnow, but Minnow, what they don't know, is a true at heart submissive, an absolute submissive. And he picks that up very, very quickly. And one of the things that we don't know about Severin is that he's a dom. And that's where the story ensues from there. And this is one of the best healing situations of a menage, a dom situation, where every member of this relationship is essential to the overall health of everybody else. When I say that this is a 5 steam, a 5 angst, and a 5 overall rating, these are one of my all-time favorite. I will reread and read and read and read these again and again because they are so damn good. When I say they're good, they are so good. And he is wild and out of his damn mind in many, many ways. And Minnow is perfect for him. So check these out. If you haven't gotten them, download them on your Kindle. I'm telling you, queue it up and read them. And then the last one that I want to recommend is an oldie but goodie. It's been a while since I read this, but I absolutely love Transcendent by Shay Savage. And this is a classic, and it literally is a caveman story. And it's a time travel story where a girl named Elizabeth, you know, for whatever reason travels back in time, and she finds herself ensnared and entrapped by Ed, and he is a caveman who speaks in grunts and groans, and it is a slow burn romance with them learning to trust each other, learning to communicate, her accepting her position, and her finding out how she got there and whether she wants to stay and what this all means. And if you have not read this, Ed is such a... he's not a grumpy son. It's not that. He is a caveman, but he does so many sweet and loving things to take care of Elizabeth, to show her that he loves her. He has recently gone through a tragedy where everyone in his village died because of a fire, and he's the only one left, and all he wants to do is find his mate. And when he finds Elizabeth, he wants her, and he's going to take her, but she doesn't understand that she's not from this time and things are not done this way. And there's one scene in here that I remember he does something and she doesn't like it, and she hits him on his nose, and he just cowers and is so upset and so embarrassed. It is just such a glorious story, and it's so sweet and so beautiful, and so, like, you're rooting for them in so many ways because you just know that they're perfect for each other, and Ed needs her so much. And at the end, the way that it ends and how, like, it sort of loops, and like the way it ends is how it begins, if that makes any sense. It's what starts the journey of discovery on. It is so beautiful because he is never going to live without her. And it's like, how are we going to make this work when we have no communication amongst us because you speak in grunts and groans? Her name is Elizabeth, but he can't say Elizabeth, but he can say Beh, Beh. It's just amazing. If you have not read this, it's for sure. It's a like emotional 5, spicy 5, and overall a 5. It's outstanding. So you guys, that is all that I have for today. I hope that you really enjoyed the new format. I hope that you check out my Wild Men recommendations because they're wild. They're wild. They're gonna rock your boat for sure. And they're just such good books. They're all 5s. You know, check them out. You'll really enjoy them. So that's all that I have for today. Do me a favor and hit that notification bell so you know every time I upload a new video, which is generally Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And hit that like bell because it really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. So I so appreciate when you guys do that. And come and check me out for my next video. And I'll see you then.